Hey, thanks for taking my call. This is Sasha. Hi, Summer.
Oh,
Cheers for
hey,
summer.
Sasha, how are you?
Great. I'm so happy to hear your voice on the air.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget about your friends back in the hood here.
I won't. I
And
won't. I know I've been running this network. Don't see anybody in LA anymore. Nice
well,
to
it's
hear you.
I vote for having at least 6 times a year like this, if not every month.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
this is a good thing because we need to have this not just like fit it in, get it over with in an hour and out of there. You know, it's like this is nice. Thank you, Roy. Thank you so much for opening the way for this nice forum to happen.
It's my pleasure.
And let's see. Well, I wanted to just make a couple of comments. I'm so glad to hear the voice of Richard Wolff, and I got a
Yes.
chance to see him for part of his the last part of his talk here in Hollywood a week or so ago. That was a really special treat to see him in person. I enjoy hearing him on the air, and I also just wanted to say, you know, during the fund drives, a little less heavy rotation on the same programs, maybe. You know, I know that's kind of up to the local program director, but it helps to have more diverse voices, I think. Just even bring out, you know, more diversity than stuff that we don't even hear at all, you know, if possible, during the fund drives. So it has the effect of bringing in more people because, frankly, I've been listening for 27 years, and after hearing the same show 3 times in a day, sometimes I just kind of have to wander off and do something else than listen to the radio. And I'm sad to say that, but it's just how it is because everyone gets tired of hearing the same thing over, you know, too heavily. But anyway, on the positive note, I wanted to make a couple of suggestions regarding the archiving of the shows and the streaming. If we could follow the examples of models of the other public stations like KCRW, where they stream in stereo at 128 kilobits per second. We do it in mono at about 64 or less. And it would be a vast improvement to have that. It would cost a little more, but I'm thinking, and I don't know if it would cost tremendously more to make it a tiered system, maybe where everyone gets a little better than they get now for free, but maybe if you get subscribed to a premium membership for, say, $10 a month, you can get the super duper stereo, hi-fi, upgrade or something like that. And that might bring in, more supporters from out, all around the world if they knew they could hear the music in stereo and it's really high quality. That's one thing. And then another thing is using the model as Democracy Now! has used for a number of years, probably more than 6 or 8 years already, where the stuff that is free and where it's downloadable and you can just have it. Democracy Now! Provides the seeding for BitTorrent, so it can get released directly into the wild through BitTorrent, which is a really effective way of sharing files and getting the message out kind of permanently, long range, globally. And it doesn't really cost anything else. It's just putting an extra link to get those seeds started and having people share the files over the BitTorrent sphere. And then finally, something which I'm not the original person to think of this, I'm certain, but I've been thinking of this for 20 years, and I've mentioned it many times at meetings, board meetings, etc. And a lot of times people just sort of swat it down, it falls on deaf ears. But if you look at the large media corporations, which I know we're not a large media corporation, but we are, we certainly have some assets, they're vertically integrated. They own not just radio, they own television stations, newspapers, magazines, and billboards. And I think a wise investment in certain areas, like in Los Angeles, there's so many billboards, and forgive me, fellow Greens, I've been a Green Party member for a long time. We don't need more billboards, but, one or two more, or one or two of the existing billboards, if we could acquire them as a permanent asset, it would, just dedicated to advertising KPFK on, next to a freeway, the 405 freeway, the 10 freeway, you name it, the 101. Those would go a long way to bringing in many, many tens of thousands of new listeners per year, if not per month. So I don't know who makes those decisions or what, but we raise millions of dollars. Why couldn't we raise an extra million or two over a couple-year period of time just dedicated to that? So I don't expect your answer on the air right now, but I just wanted to plant those seeds and those ideas. So thanks for listening, and
Thank you, Sasha.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. But I will answer them on the air anyway. Okay, so on the first thing about like heavy rotation of the same programs, I'm hoping that's something we're going to address under new management. See, again, we go back to planning, better fund drive planning, more participation with more programmers where you actually get more of the regular programmers to participate in pitching and raising money for the station so that you don't have to do such heavy preemptions. And yes, doing rotation that doesn't cause you to play the same show 3 times in one day. Those are decisions made by the program director, but they can certainly be influenced by management in terms of what the expectations are of serving the listening audience by not heavily saturating with the same programming.
Now, the person who finds it most objectionable of the repeat programs is Christine herself, which a lot of people do not realize.
Yes, I mean, I've received numerous emails on the subject of please don't play my shows in such heavy rotation. These are things we can address. It's not done at other stations. It doesn't have to be done here. And it's not even complicated to address them. We just have to do it. So having a change of, what it is that you rotate on the air, better planning will make that more possible. In terms of the bandwidth issue, I have heard from various programmers that the archive stream is thin. So bandwidth has gotten ever cheaper with every passing moment. It's something I hope that we will be able to address moving forward. Everything does require money. Part of our problem institutionally is, again, if you don't address deficit spending, and you allow yourself to spend more than you make, always a problem in any business or family, anywhere that you do that, is that we don't have a sufficient focus on infrastructural improvements, right? If you spend all your money on day-to-day operating costs, there's nothing left to do things like improve equipment and upgrade things. So this has to be a focus for the organization. Again, what serves the listening audience more effectively? So yes, I would like to see us strengthen our bandwidth there. I love the idea of releasing things into the digital wild. What a concept. But, there are many things we can do. And on the billboard issue, it'd be fantastic if Gannett or a few other people wanted to donate a few billboards to us. It costs money to acquire real estate, whether that real estate holds a pole with a sign on it or anything else. But the first thing that has to happen is a commitment on promotion, on outreach, on actually reaching out into the communities. There are digital billboards, there are fixed billboards, there are building wraps. They take money to do those things, but if you make a commitment and say, we're going to spend this amount of money this year on getting some outreach into these venues, one can do that. One can also solicit funds specifically for certain campaigns, like we would like to increase our advertising to increase listenership and revenue. So these are important things to happen. I completely agree with the idea of billboards. If you look at other radio stations, they do billboards, they do bus benches, they do, buses. And one of the things that has to be realized there is that you don't advertise radio stations. You advertise shows. People don't listen to stations. They listen to programs. So one has to approach advertising with an intelligent marketing campaign. It's like, branding, all of these things. That's the real world. That's this type of stuff that has to be applied. You can apply it to an alternative political media environment, but you use the same tools that they would use on Madison Avenue, which is what do you promote and how do you promote it? So generally speaking, you'd want to drive people, for instance, to specific drive time programming, a block, a strip, where you say, boom, 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 Monday through Friday, catch these shows at blah, 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 on, etc. You don't just say, KPFK 90.7 FM, because what does that mean to you? If you never listen to the radio station, you don't know what that is. What's that? But if you say this kind of programming on this station at this time of day, then you get ears that click on over and the stations start turning. And that's what has to happen here. And those are some of the things we'll be working on a national level. I mean, doing this across the network because all the stations need this type of support in order to build their audiences.
KPFK Los Angeles, you're on the air with Summer Reese. Caller?
Hello?
Yes.
So the word is wow. This is so exciting to hear the fresh voice and ideas and articulation that I'm hearing from Summer. I didn't think that KPFK could ever reach that point or that state. I'd just like to make a couple of introductory remarks, and that I go all the way back to KPFK before they went on the air.
Wow.
When they were, and my college roommate, wired up the very first board of the very first station on Melrose, the corner of Melrose and what's that very trendy street?
Wow.
Through Hancock Park.
Yeah.
And I was around the early days of the early staffers and the early volunteers, and there was John Van de Kamp, and that was before he became Attorney General or an Attorney General. So anyway, first of all, I'm making a commitment to come down, Roy, and answer the phones on your show.
Thank you.
There are shows, there are programs that I put thumbs up on and put thumbs down on, and I really appreciate your comments about not tearing down and attacking various points of view on the spectrum. I totally agree with that, though I find myself sometimes grumping and harumphing about this one and that one, and this, as you said, rigid doctrinaire positions. Having been once a member of that segment of the population that was rigid and doctrinaire. But one of the things that I would like to offer is some of the people who are broadcasting have horrible voices. And it's not so much what they're saying, it's just that the way that they're saying it. And then there's other people who have just wonderful voices, wonderful ways of putting things over, such as Roy, such as yourself, such as Alan Watts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not going to talk about the ones who I don't like.
That is
really
always polite.
But what I would like to say is that some of those voices sound like fingernails on chalkboards, for example. Anyway, moving on. I am so excited by the energy and the clarity and the organization that you are bringing to the listenership that many times I wanted to write or call in or say something or even drop by the station and say, hey, but I just got the feeling that as a listener that it wasn't going to be that I would just, be politely shown the door.
Mm.
And this particular moment on the show, on the program, of being able to open up dialogue to your listenership, to your public, to your supporters, is phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. And there's a lot of talent out here that would love to contribute one way or another, financially or other. So, and I am one of them.
Thank
Moving
you.
on,
What's your name?
my name is Howard.
Hi, Howard. Thank you.
Moving on, what I've often thought, and I'm just putting this out as an idea for your response. I'm a small businessman. I'm a general contractor. I'm a finished carpenter. I'm a custom woodworker. I'm pretty well established in the community, and I live on cash flow, as you mentioned, like Pacifica Foundation does. But what I've often wondered is, why not, maybe through the online thing, get the small business people to be able to I don't know what the word is, but make their services available, make our existence known to the readership. And I would be happy to discount my prices if my name could be listed along with all the other business supporters who support Pacifica Foundation and the station specifically, and create a trading circle, so to speak, or a circle of communication that keeps the money and the business and the service circulating within our community. And I have a whole bunch of other ideas and thoughts, but I'm not even going to go into them other than to say that I have impeccable credentials of past performances in the public service in the 60s. And then I dropped out in the 70s to raise a family and earn a living. That's it.
That happened to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Thank you. On the first thing regarding sound quality, I think, again, because we're such a largely volunteer-driven organization, that frequently people have, excellent concepts, programmatic ideas, but not necessarily, again, the best execution. And I feel with honest feedback and collaborative work, one could say, that is a fantastic programming idea, but perhaps you should be a contributor or a producer and not the on-air host that presents that idea. And of course, that involves being tactful with people's egos and that sort of thing. But yes, truly, some people sound better on air than others. And one can also improve the way people sound, but it takes working with them. One has to have a somewhat regular schedule of, of training, essentially, for on-air broadcasters, that you're not just, saying, hey, here's a studio, go do a show, but you're actually working with them on, enunciation, pronunciation, breath support, sounding good, not talking over each other if you have several people on a show so that they're not stepping on each other's lines, as it were.
Right.
But that's professional training. That's, some people are naturally better at these things. Some people have trained in other fields which are applicable. And some people may naturally have more skill or less skill, but those are things that should be taken into account in terms of, does this sound, again, is this good radio? Just does it sound good? And if you find that someone has fantastic programming ideas, but they're not necessarily the best person to host them, see if you can create a collaborative situation where they could work with someone else and actually create a good program. And that requires a level of attention and nurturance and professional feedback where you actually give some broadcast skills to your volunteer programmers and help them to develop to a higher skill level so that they actually are able to achieve a good on-air sound. Now, in terms of what you're talking about in terms of small businesses, this has been an ongoing discussion. I mean, we're clearly in a critical financial state as an organization. And quite frankly, most nonprofits and most community radio stations are struggling financially to deal with the fact that we're dealing with a very poor economy and people who have to meet their own bills and obligations, and that everyone who is a nonprofit is clamoring for the same dollar. So
I have the same thoughts.
Right?
But how to deal with that.
Yeah, what, in terms of overcoming the philosophical antipathy towards such things, or?
Yes.
Well, I'd be open to such thoughts if you want. After I talk a little more on this, Roy can take you off the line and Mansour could take your contact information, because I would be happy to continue dialogue on this subject in particular. Just this last week, I've green-lighted our affiliates director, Ursula Rudenberg, to go ahead and explore a program for our affiliate stations. The affiliates are, again, 170 independent radio stations that, are not owned by Pacifica, but which source programming from Pacifica. Most of these community radio stations take underwriting of some sort. Many are struggling financially. And so there was a collection of community radio stations in Minnesota which formed together in order to do group underwriting as well as other things so that they could maximize their potential by forming a group and being more appealing, essentially, to advertisers because you have several radio stations. And there's nothing in the bylaws against underwriting, but we have a deep cultural antipathy towards it. People are afraid of the slippery slope and that next, when you turn around next, the Defense Department will be underwriting, or whatever. But one can develop ethical guidelines. Many community radio stations have them regarding both like nonprofit and public service organizations, as well as, one of our board members is deeply involved with cooperatives. The idea that the alternative to the big corporate maw is the small business, is the fair trade, locally sourced, organic, mom and pop, fill in the blank. But the opposition to Walmart, people still have to wear clothing. People still have to put shoes on their kids' feet. People still have to fix their cars. And if you think about when Pacifica first started, when we had folios, what was in the back of the folio? Advertising. That's how they paid for it. Local, small businesses put in ads that supported the station. No different than, the local church that puts out its bulletin because the plumber that goes to that church put an ad in the back of the bulletin. It's the same thing for a radio station. So when I look at our websites and I see that, I say, well, there's our folio. We don't put a folio out anymore, but we do put a program schedule on the website. So what is the prohibition to say, yes, local small businesses and ethically, suitable organizations, things that we did not find to be philosophically and politically repugnant to ourselves, can sponsor us, can give us, what we can call underwriting sponsorship or support, however you want to categorize that thing. And I don't think there's anything morally wrong with that. And I think one can set bright lines that prevent one from taking advertising from organizations that we would find to be unacceptable. And so we're exploring this for our affiliates, not for the 5 sister stations that comprise the Pacifica network, but as a collaborative venture to help our affiliate stations. And essentially, affiliates are essentially our clients, to offer them another service, which will also create a revenue stream for the organization. But I want to see us survive. I think we serve an important social and public function, and I'm a pragmatist at the end of the day. I want to see us survive while adhering to our values and to expand and to become a bigger, better organization on multiple platforms. Right? Grow with the change. And I don't see how it is better for the listening audience to have 5 fund drives a year that go on for weeks at a time. And
I hate them.
Everyone,
bludgeoning.
Of course,
bludgeoning.
Of course.
They are so against communication and against what KPFK once represented.
Well, of course, because everyone, sort of the inside joke is, fund drive death spiral, because there's a point at which, when my own mother says, "Oh my God, are you guys in fund drive again?" I'm like, oh boy, okay. It's
I
not.
think that there's better, I know that there's better ways to raise money.
Sure, of course there are. And it's also about having a multiplicity. One wants to have multiple revenue streams, right? So you want to have real development, okay, where you actually seek grants from appropriate organizations to do specific, initiatives within the station. Various types of community support coming from, places like small acceptable businesses and nonprofits and other social justice organizations that might like to get their word out by supporting the station. I think that's completely acceptable when done in a very conscious fashion, And, there are many ways. And the internet, we don't sufficiently utilize that. Never mind things like, digital downloads, podcasts. There are ways to monetize the product. Did I say that? But the programming. There are ways to put this out so that more people get it and that you receive something back to help pay for its cost of production. And
I know that if I could increase my revenue stream through getting the word out over KPFK, that I'd be more than happy to turn around and I'm going to use this word because it's a key word, reinvest it in my community and in KPFK and Pacifica Foundation.
Yes.
Because I know that I'm planting seeds that are going to grow and bear fruit for everyone.
Yes, completely. And when you think,
the
again,
local community, and the larger community.
Yes, urbi et orbi, right? From the city to the world. If you think about, again, survival against the corporate takeover of the universe, where everything is in the hands of fewer and fewer organizations, and the
repulsive.
It is completely repulsive, and the control of food and the lack of quality and all of that. What is the alternative? People will continue to consume. Because we're alive, because people have to live, and they need things met, and they need, services. So would you not rather have people that support your organization, that are politically attuned to the same things that you are, and say, because I think most KPFK listeners, like if they had to have their car fixed, wouldn't they rather have it fixed by a mechanic who also listens to KPFK? Hey.
I would if he was competent, because I'd be supporting him, he'd be supporting me, and we'd all be supporting channels of communication and public broadcasting.
Completely. It is community reinvestment.
Communication.
So, yes, I think
it's all about communication for me.
So these things are worthy of further exploration, and I think we will be looking into all of them as we figure out how we're going to thrive in the coming years here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, you're on the air with Summer Reese.
What I wanted to say is I really used to enjoy Gary Null's programs. And I almost wish you would beg him to come back. You know what I'm saying?
Well, hopefully we will repair all damaged relationships so that we can offer our listeners the full complement of programming that they enjoy, including Gary Null.
Well, Gary Null was the greatest. As far as every Tuesday night, I look forward to it so much until Wednesday morning. But he's gone now, and it's not easy to listen to him on the other setup. So it would sure be great if you would do that.
Well, I think you should stay tuned in that these situations are not always permanent in Pacifica. Sometimes people go for a while and they come back again, and we will certainly be working on that.
Yes, if you could reach out to him, I think that would be good. And maybe he has a bit of an ego or whatnot, but he certainly deserves it. He's a very exceptional person.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
KPFK, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Hello, top of the morning to y'all.
Good morning.
I think everything you do is great. And sometimes I wonder, though, like, some of the shows, they almost sound like infomercials. So I don't see why people would have a problem with, like, what you were just discussing about, you know, keeping the money in the family, so to speak. And another thing that, I don't like, that Mr. Wolf show, that's great. And maybe we could actually have a show about, you know, telling people how to make money. You know, I mean, it's a capitalist system that we're under, and that's where the money is, you know, and have a show that explains what selling short is and this and that and commodities. And then the listeners could actually make money and be, like, so happy that they'd make bigger donations without even asking.
Thank you. Well, you know, I think that the left particularly is frequently somewhat disengaged from what we would call the markets. I've followed the stock market since I was 14 years old, and my mother and I were in New York City on Wall Street with the Yippies with a big banner that said jump when the stock market crashed. But that's because somebody was following the market closely enough to be able to predict that it was going to crash. I find that again, philosophically, that many people on the left not only have an antipathy towards people who are wealthy, but to money itself, but to understanding these forces which drive the world. Because in reality, economics drive political reality. You know, revolutions happen because people can't feed their children because the price of grain doubled and now they can't afford food anymore. People act like Arab Spring happened because there was suddenly a vague inkling for Western style democracy all of a sudden, not that the price of grain had doubled and people could not afford to eat, which is what causes social unrest. So a failure to understand the driving forces of economics frankly leaves out a huge piece of the puzzle when trying to understand political movements. So yes, I think it would be incredibly useful to our audiences to have, you know, a deeper exploration with, you know, some real political insight into what's going on. Not just, oh, this is what the market was doing today, but this is what it means about what the market was doing today. Yeah, this is what's happened, you know. So, yes, and I think that would serve the public tremendously because there is so little understanding about what's going on in the world, you know. And
also, if it's presented entertaining and with a little bit of wit.
Well, that's always nice.
Just, you know, like, you know, Jimmy Dore. Yeah, I mean, people have to laugh. Otherwise, you know, it's like just dread and despair followed by a little more dread and despair.
Well, that's sometimes a problem with the sort of like, here's what's wrong with the world, it's horrible, and it's all getting worse. You know, that is not something that tends to want to keep people there. One has to be able to approach problems actively, to look at what's going on in the world and say, wow, there are the problems. And what are the solutions?
The opportunities.
Yes, here are the opportunities. Here are the solutions. Here are the things that we can do to change this. This is what this means, and this is what you do to make it different. So, yes, analysis, wit is always appreciated because it makes life easier. But, yeah, some...
It has to be entertaining, otherwise you lose the crowd, you know?
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, entertaining and informative, and there has to be some hopefulness. You know, it's not about being Pollyanna, but it is about finding, you know, what is it? Problems are, solutions, something, you know, I forget, in work clothes, you know. It's about finding those solutions that, yes, will require work. And I think part of what happens is, there's this sense of being overwhelmed that the government structure, the economic structures, what's going on in the world are so much bigger than individuals, that people sometimes have some trouble approaching. How do I approach the problem without feeling overwhelmed by it? But the first thing you have to do is understand what the problems are. And then you can...
There are people that put together the information that only Pacifica offers, and they do know how to make money off of the information that Pacifica puts out there. So it'd be nice if,
Well, we'll keep working on improving the programming for the listeners and serving everyone better. Thank you so much.
I think we're going to let you go home and go to bed.
Because I only have to be here back in the morning for a staff meeting. Because this officially doesn't count as morning, Roy. This is just late night. That way I can tell myself that little bit of sleep I'm going to get is enough. Thank you, Roy. It's been really nice. It's been great taking all these listener phone calls and talking to everyone and, addressing some of the concerns.
Well, I'm glad you were willing and able to be on. And
thank you.
Now, at this time as executive director and not a co-pitching board member, it was a new level. And maybe people will now know the reason why Buzz and I have been so optimistic in our past.
Thank you, Roy, and I hope to come back again and answer more listener questions and talk more about the positive changes that are going on in Pacifica and where we're going. I mean, what our direction is and how we're going to get there. So
yes.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Roy, always to hang out with your wonderful audience. So thank you.
KPFK Los Angeles. We've been talking with KPFK Executive Director of Pacifica Foundation, Summer Reese. So January 28th, 2014.